Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show. I'm so glad you could be joining us today. We've got a really great guest lined up for our program today, someone you may not have heard of or heard from before. Her name is Andrea Williams, and she leads an organization called Christians Concerned and the Christian Legal Center in the United Kingdom. Andrea is fighting for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, particularly for Christians in the United Kingdom. She is a voice in the wilderness, I'm telling you what, in England, because you think things are bad here in America or had gotten bad, which they definitely have. But in the UK, it is tyranny. They are oppressing Christian speech everywhere. There is a lot to be done there, and so I'm really excited to have Andrea joining us. I'll talk more about her in just a minute. Before we get, though, further into today's program, wanted to remind everybody, first off, about the Truth and Liberty Awards Banquet, May the 2nd. Get your tickets now on our website at truthandliberty.net. And also, if you haven't yet sponsored the banquet, but you want to make a real impact, you really want to turn America back, there is nothing better than you can do, in my humble opinion, than sponsoring our awards banquet. This is the primary fundraiser of the year for Truth and Liberty, and we need sponsors to do all that. There's more in my heart and mind to do through Truth and Liberty than I have the money to do. You know, Andrew is preaching the gospel all over the world, making disciples, building out housing for students, launching GTN on Comcast, and all kinds of other great, amazing things. And I want to have enough funding for Truth and Liberty so that we can do our thing without drawing money away from Andrew Womack Ministries. Would you be a part of that? Would you help turn America back to its godly foundations? You can make a major difference by sponsoring our banquet. You can, and you can even scholarship tickets for other people. Go to our website at truthandliberty.net. It's going to be an amazing event as we honor Abby Johnson, former Planned Parenthood clinic director, Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, flight surgeon in the United States Army who stood up against the tyranny of the COVID vaccines for our servicemen and women. And also Seth Gruber, who is a powerful speaker, great advocate for life, is going to be the keynote speaker. It is going to be an awesome evening. We're going to have great featured entertainment crafted by Elizabeth Murin. It's going to be a great night. Also wanted to mention to everybody a little free product today. Once again, a message to teenagers from an old man, a little booklet by Andrew Womack with several bits of key advice that will help young people steer the right course as they set out in life. Things like the deception of rebellion, the foolishness of sexual perversion, the dangers of experimentation, and God's place in your relationships. Go to our website, a different website, but go to truthandlibertygtn.com and you can pick up your free copy of that today. Let me talk about this subject of woke tyranny, DEI tyranny, for just a minute. You know, the Donald Trump administration is bringing an absolute assault on DEI. It is a glorious thing to behold. It is something every American should rejoice about. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, these little three words that leftists have coined, is actually leftist, communist, Marxist, LGBT, ungodly, satanic thought control, belief control. It promotes all sorts of evils. One of the worst is the suppression of freedom of religion and freedom of speech. In America, we have a phrase we've developed over the last few years because we didn't know what to call it, but we refer to things as cancel culture. This cancel culture comes from the idea that you should punish everybody you disagree with. People that don't say the things that you think should be said, punish them. It began in the 1990s with this concept of politically correct speech. Do you remember that? Oh, that's not politically correct. As if you're entitled to say what I can say, right? Who decides what's politically correct and incorrect? I thought we all had freedom to express our views. But then it progressed into boycotts. Well, we're not going to support you if you don't have politically correct speech. We're going to boycott a TV show. We're going to boycott a business. We're going to, bring every bit of pressure we can to make people disassociate from you. We're going to punish you because you said something we don't agree with. I remember when I was in law school in my course on the First Amendment, we read some material by feminist so-called scholars. Their whole principle was words hurt. Words harm people. And because of words, we women have been oppressed through the centuries, and so we need to police people's words, right? Next, after boycotting, comes along a concept called hate crimes. Oh, now we're going to have a special level of punishment if your criminal behavior is motivated, we think, by so-called hate. In other words, if your crime hurts somebody that's in one of our little classes, one of our little constituent groups, then you're worthy of additional punishment, specialized punishment, additional shame. It's not enough that you committed an assault, which we already criminalized. It's not enough that you commit murder or theft or some other crime. But if that crime is against an LGBT, or if that crime is against a racial minority, well, then it's a hate crime because you hated the person. Well, isn't all crime motivated by some level of hate or disrespect of other people? You see, the belief is that anyone who doesn't toe the line in the group identity politics realm in terms of their thoughts and behavior and speech should be punished. And this is tyranny. Here's the great irony of the whole thing. You're punishing people for not being tolerant, and in doing so, you yourself are now the one who is not tolerant, right? It's a great hypocrisy. Recent polling shows a dangerous decline in free speech values among younger generations. George Barna's polling shows that a majority of millennials today, for example, believe it's okay to ostracize, punish, or exclude people if they hold unwelcome views, right? If they are not woke, so to speak. They don't understand the concept of free speech as an unalienable right. It used to be in America, a common saying would be, I disagree with you, but I will stand up and even give my life for your right to say what you believe, right? This concept of oppression of speech, of punishing people based on what they say and believe, based on their religious convictions. The truth of the matter is this, folks, is that it is the spirit of Antichrist at work. Now, let me pull back a little bit. The DEI movement, diversity, equity, inclusion, what are its claims? What are its truth claims? Well, the first one is an out-and-out oxymoron. They claim that there is no such thing as truth. Of course, they're stating a proposition of truth, so it's they don't even get out of the gate when it comes to rationality here. They're hypocritical and self-contradictory from the beginning, but nevertheless, they hold to it. No, there's no truth. You can't tell me what the truth is. No one knows what's true. Why is this a religious dogma for them? Because then it means they get to believe whatever they want to believe, and you can't hold them account. You can't test it. You can't challenge it. My truth, your truth. A bunch of nonsense. The second thing is they say all religions are equal. There's no difference between Hinduism, Islam, Taoism, New Age, and no, don't go so far as Christianity. Christianity is the one that's really not equal. It's over here. Now, Christianity is equal as long as you're embracing our doctrine. As long as you say that LGBT is equal with, one man, one woman for life. As long as you agree with us that America's an historically racist, systemically racist nation, not Christian nation, not founded on Christianity. As long as you agree with that, then you can practice your Christianity. Okay, so it's like controlled Christianity is equal, but not true Christianity. They also say that all sexuality is equal. All sexual orientations are equal. Transgenderism is equal. There's no such thing as gender, right? People can change their gender. It's fluid. Gender is subjective. It's not real. It's all in the head. And then they say Racism. Racism is evil. Of course, we agree it's evil. But then they say reverse racism, though, is okay. It's okay because we have to rectify the old racism. And, besides, white people can't help it. They're automatically racist. They can't help it. That's why they say all cultures are equal. That's why our borders should be open. No qualitative distinctions are allowed between cultures except criticism of Western nations and Western civilization. They say free enterprise is bad and Marxism is good. These are the doctrines inside woke ideology. These are the principles that they live by. And so the suppression of free speech, the suppression of freedom of religion, specifically Christianity. Notice they're not suppressing Islam. No, they're not suppressing any religion except Christianity. The suppression of ideas and speech, according to woke ideologues, is okay. It's an acceptable tool to promote those doctrines. All right? So that's why I say it's the spirit of Antichrist. That's why Andrew Womack says it. Don't mean to speak for him, but that's my understanding of why he says that. Revelation chapter 13, verses 6 through 8 says this. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God. This is referring to the beast, who also known as the Antichrist. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. You see, the spirit of Antichrist, through Satan's power, forces people to worship him. To worship who? Mankind, right? To worship the man of sin. Let's look a little further in Revelation 13. In verse 15 it says, And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Next verse says, And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now what's happening there is the false prophet enforces worship of the beast, enforces ideological conformity by withholding privileges that are necessary for life from those who do not conform. We see this, China has already implemented this system with its social credit score. The system was already implemented during COVID. For example, when people were being deplatformed, being canceled on social media for not towing the line, for not having acceptable posts about COVID. We saw it in France and other nations where they required you to have a pass that allowed you access to basic places like supermarkets and public venues. You had to have the pass, you had to have a COVID shot in order to get that pass. Right? Satan, you guys, here's the thing. Satan is after the Word of God. He is seeking to kill and quench the truth of God's Word, to expunge it, to expel it from the earth. Because he knows if he can get God's Word silenced, then people can't believe. And if they can't believe, they can't come into redemption and God's plan can be frustrated. It is literally his only hope. It says in Mark chapter 4, verse 15 and verse 17b, let's read verse 15 first. And these are they by the wayside where the word is sown, but when they have heard, Satan cometh immediately and take away the word that was sown in their hearts. This is the parable of the sower. The first category of people, we see Satan coming immediately to take the word. And then in verse 17, the latter half of verse 17, it says, talking about people where the seed falls on rocky ground, when affliction or persecution ariseth for the word's sake, immediately they are offended. Satan sends persecution, in other words, using the government, using the powers of this world to persecute those who believe God's word so that they will give up on the word. He's after the word. Jesus Christ himself was put to death because of his words. Read the Gospels. Because he claimed to be the Son of God. That's why they killed him. Now, because he challenged what he said. They didn't kill him for his miracles. They killed him because of what he said. The apostles were put to death because of what they said, because of the preaching of the gospel. The prophets, both Old and New Testament, were put to death because of their words. Persecution against the church is because of what we say. This is the spirit of Antichrist trying to stop the Word of God. So folks, we must stand up for freedom, freedom of religion and freedom of speech. It is essential for the gospel and the kingdom of God. It's also essential for democracy. We can't run a country, the people can't operate a country, run a country, if they can't talk about the issues. Because if they can't talk and speak about the issues, then people cannot be informed. They can't be informed about the truth. They can't hold their leaders accountable. Number 3, expression is a fundamental part of who we are as people. God made us in His own image and in His own likeness, and God is an expressive being. You deny someone the ability to express their thoughts, views, and opinions, you are denying their humanity, and is a fundamental alienation of a person. Look in Russia, Soviet nations, communist nations. Why do people walk around with their heads down in a state of depression all the time? One of the reasons is because they can't talk. They can't express themselves. Can words harm? Well, they can, but that's why we have laws like prohibiting fraud, prohibiting defamation, prohibiting these things that are outside the realm of legitimate speech. But criticizing other people, as long as you're telling the truth, you're free to do it. Expressing opinions that are contrary to the norm or contrary to what the powers that be want, that's totally legitimate and acceptable and must be. It's time that we as Americans reestablish in our country, and not just America, but Europe and around the world, we must reestablish freedom of religion and freedom of speech as the bedrock freedoms on which everything else is based. Here with me today to talk about these issues is Andrea Williams. She is a barrister in England, an attorney, who has practiced at all levels of the British judicial system. After pioneering student and policy work of the Lawyers Christian Fellowship, she went on to found Christian Concern and the Christian Legal Center, which have run some of the most high-profile Christian freedom cases and campaigns in all of Europe. She's a leading analyst, campaigner, and spokeswoman on issues of national importance in the moral life of the nation of England and the defender of Christian liberties in the parliamentary process. And so I'm really excited to have Andrea back on the Truth and Liberty show. It's been a couple years, but there's some very important things we need to talk about because it's not just the United States. This is a worldwide problem that we're facing, and it's time for Christians especially to stand up and fight back. So don't go away. We're going to have a little break here, share some information, and then I'm going to sit down and have an amazing discussion with our good friend, Andrea Williams. I want to invite you to join us for the annual Truth and Liberty Awards banquet on May 2nd, 2025 on the campus of Charis Bible College right here in Colorado. We're going to be honoring 2 Americans who've stood courageously for biblical values. Abby Johnson, the former clinic director for Planned Parenthood, whose life story was the subject of the movie Unplanned, is going to get the Samuel Adams Award. And then Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, a United States Army flight surgeon who stood up against mandatory vaccines in the military, is going to receive the Samuel Whitmore Award. There's going to be a powerful keynote message delivered by Seth Gruber, the founder and author of the 1916 Project, an eye-opening expose about the foundations of the abortion and LGBT movement in America. Tickets are $125 each and can be purchased on our website at truthandliberty.net. Now, this event is a fundraiser, so sponsors are welcome. Make plans to join us in the Rocky Mountains on May 2nd for this inspiring and beautiful evening. Welcome back to the Truth and Liberty Show. My special guest today, I'm so excited to have back on the Truth and Liberty program, Andrea Williams, all the way from across the pond, the United Kingdom. Andrea, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Well, it's really good to be with you, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I hope it's not too late in the day there in the UK. I think last time you were on, it was like 3 in the morning.
It was. That's exactly right. I remember that very, very, very well indeed. And it was quite nice to have the backdrop of London silent at that time, and the lights were there at the backdrop of London. No, but today we're recording at a more civilized time.
Yes. Well, so Andrea, your organization is called Christian Concern, and then I think you also have the Christian Legal Center. Can you just share with our viewers, remind them, what is it that you do?
Yes, well, we seek to promote Christian truth in the public space. So, as I speak with you now, I have just come from Parliament where I've been talking about a schools bill and a bill that will legalise assisted suicide in our nation unless we manage to stop it. So, we're there to articulate the truth, articulate what's right. And at our legal centre, because I'm trained as a barrister, an advocate, an attorney, as you would say in the United States, our legal centre defends those that speak for Christ's truth in the public space or at work and find themselves in trouble simply for speaking out their faith. So, to be honest, Richard, if you'd ever told me that there would be a need for an organisation like Christian Concern, or that I would, as an attorney, spend my life defending Christians who were losing their jobs for offering prayer or giving Bibles or speaking the truth on marriage here in the United Kingdom, I would have said that that was impossible. But it's all very real, very true. I was qualified as an attorney in 1988. And so we have 1,000 case inquiries that come through our legal centre every year. So it's a lot. It's a lot. Next week we're in the High Court here in the United Kingdom, defending tax on education, tax on our Christian schools that has been implemented for the first time, education tax for the first time ever in our country and indeed across Europe. So that is something that we'll be doing next week. So we're a legal centre, a policy and campaigning organisation, and we also seek to equip the next generation through a Wilberforce Academy and through our publications. And
that is such incredibly important work. Before we go any further, Andrea, can you share your website with the viewers?
Yes, it's christianconcern.com. So you can just Google away and you will find us there.
All right,
put us
fantastic.
Into any search app.
Well, I don't want to overstate, but I try to be informed in this area, and I would venture to say that you and your organization are probably leading the way, not just in the UK, but in all of Europe, with respect to fundamental rights of freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Would that be an overstatement?
Well, thank you so much for that encouragement, Richard. For sure, we are right there on the front line. We are fearless, and we genuinely care so much of the staff team here of 40 and others that work with us. But for sure, we seek to be fearless in the public space. We seek to be fearless in the cases that we take, because we stand for truth and we stand for Christ's church and his truth. And we thank God that he's kept us this far.
Absolutely. Well, I like to say that God is not done with America yet, and I think I would probably be correct in saying God's not done with England either, or the United Kingdom, and that England's going to come out of this mess, and he's going to use you guys and of course many others to bring it out. But how are things in the UK when it comes to freedom, Andrea? Can you just kind of give us an overview?
Yes. Well, I think that what it is fascinating in a way is to see what's happened in the United States of America. The presidential election and the shift, and the shift in the atmosphere, the fact that equality and diversity policies are pretty much being shredded at federal level and so on is quite extraordinary. And I think honestly, here in the United Kingdom, many ordinary folk, including Christians, can't really believe it. They can't understand how there could even possibly be a Trump administration, or that this might happen. This is honestly how many people feel here in the United Kingdom. And so that's, in a sense, the temperature gauge of where many of us are in the United Kingdom in terms of freedom. That that many people and many churches and many Christians can't understand why America has chosen this path. And of course, my response is, well, if you want a path of freedom, if you want a path of freedom to speak, freedom to express your views, if you want freedom of religion, if you want an ability to pray in schools, if you want an ability to say that men are men and women are women, and that people shouldn't be punished for speaking that truth, then your eyes will be open to why America voted for President Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Well,
there's still a lot of resistance, there's a lot of resistance within the church here, even to that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, take one of the most, there have been many alarming cases coming out of England, and I want to talk about some of those that you've handled. But one of the ones that's made some headlines here in the U.S., now not mainstream media, it's only conservative circles, but is the gentleman who was standing outside the safety zone of an abortion clinic, and all he was doing was praying silently in his head.
Yes.
He wasn't even speaking. And the authorities came up and actually confronted him and asked him what he was doing, and he said praying. And even though he hadn't spoken a word out loud, they arrested him and prosecuted him. And here's the thing, he wasn't even praying for an end to abortion. He was praying for his child that he and his wife had lost to abortion so many years before. So here we have the United Kingdom actually entering a person's mind and punishing them for what goes on inside of their own head, regardless of any harm whatsoever caused to anybody else. That, to me, is extreme.
It is very extreme, and we have to keep on pushing back in these cases. We have, there is just a reality that street preachers in the United Kingdom have been being arrested for the last 25 years. They often get put in police cells, so they do get imprisoned. But at the Christian Legal Centre, whether at first hearing or later on appeal, we have managed one way or another to overturn judgments where they have been punished. So we have kept the door to freedom open by running every single one of these cases. But what the government is now implementing in the case that you've mentioned and in others is that these spaces in the United Kingdom around abortion clinics where people are not allowed to speak or pray or exist. And this very day, we're dealing with a case in a town called Aldershot, where the local government, the local city government, the local council is saying that there is a zone inside the town where no street preachers, where there should be no preaching, no praying, nothing of that kind, in order not to. It should be a safe zone, in effect, a safe zone away from preaching. So that's something that we are dealing with as you speak.
Well, you've got many other cases, but I want to ask you about. Let's go back to what has happened here in the United States, just as we kind of introduce this subject. Donald Trump has issued an executive order as president, basically disbanding all DEI programs in the United States federal government. The scope of that is astounding, because most people don't even realize how deeply DEI has permeated our government here. And as they are beginning to execute on this order, it's revealing all sorts of unbelievable stuff, where our government has been literally spending billions and billions of dollars all around the world promoting homosexuality, transgenderism, and all sorts of other wacky liberal stuff. Just incredible. But I'm wondering, people in the UK, I guess, are still sort of in shock that Trump was elected, and even maybe in more shock to see what it is he's actually doing. Why do you think even Christians have a hard time seeing that it's the right course of conduct?
So what we have done with the faith is we've privatized Christ.
Yes.
We've made him just a personal savior, when in fact he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's Lord of all.
Amen.
And one day he will rule and he will reign. And we have to bring his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And it's as if we've forgotten our cultural task, our creation mandate, which is to subdue the earth.
Yes.
According to God's plan and according to God's purposes. And that means placing Christ fully in the center of the public discourse.
Yes.
But we've allowed him to be one truth among many. We've allowed him to be subjected to a diversity and equality policies that say he's one truth among many. But in fact, what happens in diversity and equality policies is that other protected categories, such as homosexuality, trans, disability, almost every other protected characteristic gets preferred over Christian faith.
Yep.
And also the other thing is this, that Christian faith gets relegated to a subcategory, so that the color of skin gets equated to so-called sexual orientation, and belief gets equated to something that's just in your mind, not something that you're free to express and free to live out. And so as a result of that, you get punished for your belief if you cannot promote homosexuality.
Yeah.
And you get labeled racist because it said that unless you can promote homosexuality, you must be a racist. And so what happens then is people go completely silent.
That's logical.
And so there's a sense in which our churches have just shrunk the gospel to be just about that. That's what's happened. And if I could go back to the start of my professional life in many ways, I would be wanting to speak much more clearly to the leaders of the church, to say you have to be training and equipping the people in the pews, the men and women in the congregation, to understand that they're cultural warriors, that they have to take their place in the diversity and equality zone and advocate for Christ in this place. But we failed, I think, to do that.
Yeah. Well, and in England's case, you have the Anglican Church is the state church, and ministers are often finding themselves in public settings where they're not free to speak the truth according to the Bible. I think you actually have a case. Is it his name was
Bernard Randall?
Yeah, Bernard, is that it? Bernard Randall.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Who wanted to talk about, you tell me, what was the Bernard Randall case?
Well, first of all, I mean, and taking it from the top of what you just said. So our national church is the Church of England, and an Anglican church with an Archbishop of Canterbury, and there are 26 bishops that sit in the House of Lords in our parliamentary system. And what has been extraordinary is that since 2011, when Justin Welby, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, came into power, the Church of England has not been able to say clearly in the public space that marriage is between a man and a woman. Him coming to power at that time exactly coincided with us legislating for marriage to be between two men and two women. The church in our nation actually has liturgical services to celebrate the renaming of someone who transitions. This is all so when this is happening at a national level in your national church, and this is the public utterance of the church in Parliament and even in our court cases. So when we do our court cases, very often the Church of England's teaching is used against faithful, biblical Christians who believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, the Christian viewpoint of marriage. So the church, the national church, has failed to stand. But I also want to sometimes say this to the churches and to the Orthodox or the Bible-believing Christians or the evangelical Christians that believe in marriage. I want to say to them, well, what would you have done if you were the Archbishop of Canterbury? Because do I hear the free churches, the evangelical churches, the charismatic churches, do I hear their voices loud and clear in the public space on this issue? Do I hear them vibrantly speaking and taking local councils to task or workplaces to task and rewriting the equality and diversity policies that are in their workplaces? No, I don't. And so I do have a challenge, because if our national church didn't speak, then the true church should have spoken. But there's been silence, which then means that organizations like mine can look more isolated than they really are. Yeah. So that is, that is something to say.
I think Jesus said in the Gospels, he said, how can you have faith if you fear man, right? It's impossible for us to be faithful to Christ if we have the fear of man in our hearts. And if these leaders in the church in England if they're wanting to get the approval of the public instead of the approval of God, then they're going to fold like a cheap suit every time.
They can be professing Christ, but if they're not confessing him, if they're not speaking clearly on the cultural issues of the day, which is life being made in the image of God, from the moment of conception to the point of death, which is marriage as between a man and a woman, which is about the fact that Jesus Christ is uniquely true. And people expect bishops and archbishops to say those things. I mean, Andrew Womack and Richard would say these things clearly, but if the bishops had kept on saying those things clearly, then everyone would have expected them to keep on saying those things, but they stopped saying those things. And in a sense, this is why not all Christians, but many Christians in the church in England, by that I don't mean the Church of England, I mean the church generally in England, don't understand the Trump phenomenon. Is because they still haven't understood that when he was speaking clearly on marriage and speaking to the ordinary man and woman, when he was speaking clearly on equality and diversity policies and stopping the trans movement, in a sense, when he was saying these things, that was resonating with ordinary people who and when the Democrat Party was basically saying to a woman, you're right, your body, you can abort essentially up to birth, that wasn't resonating. It wasn't resonating with people generally, because if you speak to my daughter-in-law who lives in the States, she's married to a Puerto Rican, so I absolutely love the Latino. I know the Latino community very well over there in Los Angeles, because my daughter is married into it in many ways, and I know that when Donald Trump spoke to that community, he was speaking to their conservative Christian backdrop.
Yeah.
Right. Now, many of them are real believers, but that's what he was speaking to, because they don't want the right to kill all their babies up to birth.
You have to sear your conscience to believe that it's right to kill a baby in the late stages of pregnancy. I mean, I think the entire pregnancy, but certainly then, because so many other things to not recognize that it's wrong for a biological man to compete against women in women's sports is just beyond belief, isn't it? I mean, so you're right. Yeah. Trump is speaking what everybody's thinking.
Well, let me tell you our latest case, Richard. I'll tell you literally this week that it's breaking, and it may well be that you can bring up it was the front page of our Daily Mail on Sunday this week, and it had a double page spread in the middle of the newspaper, and Jennifer Melly has been all over our media this week. This is a nurse who came into England from Uganda at the age of 16. For 12 or 13 years now, she has been working in our National Health Service. Last summer, in the nighttime shift, a 6-foot prisoner shackled to 2 prison guards had come into the hospital. He was a convicted paedophile. His offence had been pretending to be a woman and luring young boys to perform sexual acts and film them. He came in on the urology department. He was very upset. She's a great nurse. She was used to prisoners coming in. She was loving him, looking after him, serving him. He overheard a conversation. He wanted to be called by a particular feminine name. She even called him by that name. She was speaking to the consultant doctor because he was so agitated about what to do, how to help him, and so on. And this prisoner overheard her calling him Mr. Male. He came out from his bed with the prisoners pretty much in tow, the prison guards in tow, and said to her, "I'm not Mister, I'm not male, I'm female. You must refer to me as female. So imagine that's nighttime shift. She's the senior nurse on. He lunges, he comes, and then calls her the N-word because she's from Uganda. So he calls her the N-word, and this situation then passes. She's shaken up. He calms down. She's going home on the bus. Is asked, and somebody calls her from the hospital and asks her to explain what happened. She is then the one that is put under disciplinary measure and moved from that ward for not referring to him by his preferred pronouns.
Didn't she also, Andrea, I think your website, didn't she tell him, I'm sorry, I can't do that because I'm a Christian? And
she did.
She expressly.
She said to him, I'm happy to call you by your name. I'm here to look after you, but I can't call you by, I basically can't use your pronoun because I'm a Christian. She said it very nicely.
Yeah. And she's been reprimanded or whatever by the National Institute of Health, the Federal Department of Health there.
She's still under investigation by the Nurses and Midwifery Council. So she's she's the one that's under investigation. She was moved from her unit. She was stopped from getting overtime, which is something that she needed, something that for her family. And I mean, you can't really make it up. I mean, little bit like you can't really make it up.
No, it's tyranny. It's just pure and simple tyranny. You're not allowed to speak the truth. That's what we used to see in Soviet Russia and so on, right? And speaking of that, I wanted to ask you about a speech that United States of America Vice President J.D. Vance gave at the recent Munich Security Conference, where he spoke very directly to many of the leaders of Europe about the question of fundamental freedoms of religion and speech and other things. I'd like to play a clip for you, Andrea, if you don't mind. So if we're ready, let's play this first clip. He's referring to the recent cancellation of Romanian election results, election in Romania, simply because of so-called misinformation. The political elite step in and say, okay, King's X, we're not counting the results of that election because the other side used what we deem to be misinformation, so we're going to do it over. Let's play this clip.
We mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany, too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values.
Yeah, so Andrea, I don't know if you were aware of the cancellation of that Romanian election, but does Vice President Vance have a valid point?
That's what I've been living. And the thing is, I qualified early. I was 22 when I qualified as an attorney. And very quickly, I was getting these cases. And it was hard to believe that, in a sense, that this was the work that I was really actually doing. But I was also it was isolating in many ways. And it was as if there was a collective blindness. And even within the law, these policies, the equality and diversity policies, equality legislation, human rights, so-called human rights legislation, is actually not often about dignity. And
No.
so you end up with a very chaotic backdrop for law, no consistent backdrop for law. Prior to this agenda, there had been law that was easily understood, which was rooted in biblical heritage. When J.D. Vance speaks like that, I can go right back to the year 2010, 2011, 2012, when we were running cases in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And the British government at that time, under a Conservative Prime Minister, had submitted to the European Court of Human Rights that the cross was not a Christian symbol, that it was jewelry. And we had two cases, the air steward, you remember, who had refused to take off her cross, and also a nurse who'd refused to take off her cross. There was also a government submission against us that believing in marriage as between a man and woman was an expression of the Christian faith. So as far back as 2011, I remember we were in Europe and those submissions were being made by our government. And what was fascinating at that time was this, that I remember lobbying at the same time, going around the rooms of different members of the European Parliament or commissioners. And some of them, it was extraordinary because those that came from Central or Eastern Europe said, this is tyranny. What's happened to these clients of yours is tyranny. It's what happened to us. We've come out of communism. We've come out of tyranny, but this is a new tyranny. But the Western European countries thought that it was progressive, thought that it was freedom, and thought that our clients were subduing and suppressing freedom. Yeah. And so, yeah.
So I think Vice President Vance made sort of the same point in this speech. There's another clip I'd like to ask you to look at, because in this one he lists many different examples of how leftist progressive ideology, the woke movement as we refer to it here, has resulted in the abridgment of freedom of speech and religion across Europe. Can we play the second clip, please?
Ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend.
All right, so that was actually the third clip, but I think the point is made there. Western Europe certainly has come under, as you said, sort of a cloud where
it's a new religion. It's a progressive. They cannot see. I mean, the Bible talks about spiritual blind. It's a collective. Yes. People are so indoctrinated, and they do not know that they have been indoctrinated and of course they don't know how to think differently, because from the cradle in the schools, they have been taught these things as if it were a religion. Mm-hmm. And Christianity is relegated. Our history is disapproved of. And so you don't end up with men prepared to die for their country anymore, because they're told that, well, that country was pretty much responsible for all the terrible things that are going on in the world.
Yes.
It was racist, it was colonialist, it was, and so on. And so we don't raise men and women of faith and of moral courage, because in fact they're told they can be anything they want to be. From age 3 or 4, they can be highly sexualized, they're and so on and so forth. So what you have is a demoralizing of the culture, and it's taught as a good. It's taught as equality and diversity and being kind. And in fact, somebody like Jennifer Melley, that nurse I spoke of, or the Darlington nurses that have been forced to change with a trans person, a man who calls himself a transgender woman, in a changing room, they've been put on kindness programs to be kind.
Teaching them to be kind.
Teaching the nurses to be kind. So unless you accept, again, a 6-foot man in boxer shorts with holes in them, standing in the female changing room in a hospital, and it's the nurses that are told to be kind. But you know, I think that there was a mention, I don't know whether it came just before the JD Vance clip or during it, where it talks about people being cancelled or censored. But what also happens is that people just go quiet.
Yes.
So although the nurses had a lot of support at the start, as time goes on and the system wears everyone else out, everyone just goes quiet. Everyone in the Darlington nurses case, these women that are being forced to change in this changing room with the man, the whole staff has been told by the trust, the National Health Service Trust, you are not to speak about this to anyone, to your colleagues, to the press, on social media. Do not talk about it. It's subject to legal proceedings. If you talk about it, you will be disciplined. So what does everybody do? They go quiet.
Yeah, it's what we've done is we've taken Soviet communism, godless communism, and we've redressed it, right? We've changed the labels and what we call everything, and just represented it. And Western Europe, because I'm not here to be interviewed, but has rejected God and Christianity. It has no moral or philosophical way to resist this ideology. Is that fair to say?
That's it. That's exactly it. And that's why your program, Andrew Womack Ministries, is so vital, because of the fearlessness of it. It's amazing. I'm so grateful that we are seeing this great pushback in America, and generally many churches in America awakening to this. I see a new wave, a new generation of churches and leaders that are alive to all of this, a new wave of Christian culture in business, in music, in the arts, in new technologies. I see those things emerging, and I'm praying the same for the United Kingdom, because God is a lot more patient than me, I've decided, as I get on. that it's just extraordinary how patient he is, and that he never gives up on us. He loves us so much. No, he never gives up on us.
No,
and when
he doesn't.
There are people that love him and contending for him, he wants to make a way. Now, I really honestly pray. I don't feel like we've caught what's happening in America here in the United Kingdom. But I do pray that we will.
Yeah, I think that you will. I think, here's a thought. Maybe it'll be encouraging to you. In the parable of the prodigal son, the wayward son, it took him a while. He had to go through a process of subjugation and deprivation, and eventually, Jesus said, he came to himself. And I think that can also be applicable not just to an individual, but to a society and to a nation. As the people collectively begin to realize, wait a second, I've made a big mistake here. This is not good. This is not what I want. This is not pleasant. And it will happen to the UK. I mean, eventually people will realize, because this tyranny, it's motivated by Satan, and it doesn't have an ending point. it will just grow worse and worse. And eventually the people will have to rise up and throw it off. That's my word of encouragement, Andrea. What do you think about that?
Well, thank you. And yes, amen.
Well,
I think that's exactly it. And I think that what we've seen with this new and emerging generation, my parents' generation, those born in the 50s and 60s, many of them threw off God. So they didn't teach my generation. So we didn't know God. And then we didn't teach our children. And now our children are having children. And there are all the generations in between. But there's a sense when you're 3 or 4 generations on and it's godless, people see that it's empty. Sin is sad, sin is bad, and sin is mad. And there is a collective insanity. And there's also this loneliness. So there's kind of a collective thinking that makes everyone feel unwell. And then you have this solitude of so many people in society. You have these terrible statistics around internet use and porn use and so on. You have terrible statistics in terms of suicide, particularly in men under 40. And in the midst of that, being in the depths of the pigsty, as it were, in the outworkings of the rejection of God and the hopelessness, what can step in? The open arms of the Father who's running to the prodigal son and saying, I'm putting on my best cloak, I'm putting on restoration, I'm putting on the very best meal for you because you can be restored. And that is it. We can't go so far that God cannot rescue us and pick us up and turn things around. It's never too late in God's kingdom. Amen. He's there. And the thing is, in all that brokenness, he makes a way because it's supernatural.
He does. And it's all about God. It's all about Jesus. And
it is.
We'll be praying for the UK and just believing for great things there as revival is going to hit there just like it is here. There was hopelessness here. Whoever thought that Roe versus Wade would be overturned, and it's happening, and many other great things too. So, Andrea, tell people again how they can learn more about your organization and even support you financially.
Yes, well, it would be really amazing if those that are watching this would sign up to receive a weekly newsletter at Christian Concern. Just find us on any search engine, and there's a Join Us tab on our website. And that, I think, the reason why I think that's useful for those of you who are in the States, and I'm sure in other countries that listen to this program.
Andrea, I hate to have to cut you off. We're down to 25 seconds.
Okay.
Folks, go check out their website at christianconcern.com. You will be suitably shocked and appalled, and support her work there. She is a lone voice in the wilderness and needs your help. And guys, thanks for watching Truth and Liberty today. Andrea, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I want to remind everybody about our free booklet. Just go to truthandlibertygtn.com and you can get that today. God bless you all. Thanks for watching.